Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. Traditionally, Teutons have always had pretty average paladins. They have bloodlines and all of the blacksmith upgrades, as well as a bonus to resist conversions, but always lacked husbandry, making them a bit slower than most. This is all still true in the HD version, but in Definitive Edition, the developers have given the Teuton barracks and stable units +1 melee armor in Castle Age and another +1 in Imperial. For me, this brings up the question of whether or not Teutons now have the best paladins in the game. Of course, we're not talking about Teutonic Knights or the other Teutonic Knights, we're just strictly looking at paladins. In this video, I'll try to give a snapshot of how they compare to other civilizations and try to get an idea of where they stand. There's a lot of bragging rights on the line here for some of these paladin civs at the round table, so I don't want to be cavalier about the analysis, and I'll try to take a variety of things into consideration. To start with, jousting is of course a big part of paladin culture, so let's start with a tournament between some of the best. This also happens to be the area we'd expect Teutons to shine, with their extra 2 melee armor. In fact, as a way to set the tone, it might be surprising to learn, but they beat Frank paladins one-on-one. Franks have had the undisputed best paladins since Age of Kings. Even the design for all paladins has the fleur-de-lis. So the fact Teutons beat them one-on-one must mean that Teutons are the new #1 paladin civ. But hold up, there's a new top paladin civ to compete with, which is the Lithuanians. Their paladins get 1 extra attack for each relic they've garrisoned, up to a maximum of 4. It turns out with 0 or 1 relic for the Lithuanians, the Teuton Paladin is better in a head-to-head fight. It's also worth noting that the Teuton armor bonus is completely free and automatic, whereas the Lithuanians actually need to collect relics to get their bonus. For reasons I hope are apparent, Lithuanians with +2 attack are evenly matched with Teutons having 2 more melee armor. In that case, whoever gets in the first attack is always going to win. You can probably see where this is going, but things start to shift in favor of the Lithuanians when they have 3 or 4 relics, in which case every new relic basically lets them take out a Teuton Paladin in 1 fewer hit. We can summarize all of this into a melee hierarchy, with Teutons doing fairly well, but not always the best. Remember, this is a pretty exclusive group, with Franks as the baseline at the bottom. Every other Paladin civ wouldn't even be making it onto this list at all. Now, halberdiers are an interesting case, as obviously a very common counter to paladins, since 2 melee armor shouldn't matter very much against a unit with 32 bonus damage. In practice though, the numbers line up in such a way that Teuton and Frank paladins take 6 hits from halberdiers, whereas other paladins take 5. It's a good example of where what should be a small effect ends up making a large difference because of the discrete way the damage is calculated. But so far this has all just been a general picture of where they sit in melee combat. So far, they seem to be looking pretty good, but now let's talk about how they are against ranged units. Of course, melee armor doesn't help much there, but in this case there isn't really a standout civilization, since no paladin has more than the standard 7 pierce armor. Arguably the Franks stand out here with 12 more HP, and for example can take 4 more shots than anyone else against arbalest. You could also argue Persians are better against archers because of their +2 attack against them, or Lithuanians because of up to 4 more attack, but truthfully all paladins with bloodlines and full armor upgrades are going to perform about the same. If anything, Teutons might be a bit below average here because of their lack of husbandry. But now let's take a look at some of the more situational considerations that aren't captured very well in the previous tests. To start with, I think it's important to acknowledge the Frank and Hun faster creation times. I think creation time bonuses have more of an effect in the early game than in the post-Imperial stage when you have paladins, as by that point it's relatively easy to add in more stables. That said, even in the late game it can offer a nice advantage. In a big fight where both sides lose a lot of their army, for example, if a new player can create a new army faster, they can potentially snowball the game into a win. It's subtle, but when it comes to paladins, it is a definite advantage for the Franks. Another really hard effect to quantify is, of course, movement rate. Cumans have the fastest paladins, which are about 5% faster than those with husbandry and 15% faster than Teutons. That slow but heavily armored motif makes it harder for Teutons to raid effectively and reduces their responsiveness around the map. I wouldn't consider Cuman paladins the best because of this, but it is a big knock against the Teutons. Then there's the even more situational advantages that some civs have, like I mentioned earlier with the Persians +2 against archers, including cavalry archers. That +2 is on top of 18 attack already, so as a percentage increase, I'd argue it's less impactful than it would be for knights. You also have the Magyars getting the attack upgrades for free and Spanish blacksmith techs costing no gold. These are slight buffs to the Paladin, but with limited long-term impact, so I don't think this puts them on a level with Franks or Lithuanians. Again, I think the Teuton Paladins also compare quite favorably to either of these civilizations. But let's not forget one of the easiest bonuses to overlook, which is that Celt Paladins can convert herdables even if enemy units are next to them. Anecdotally, I've won 100% of my games against people when I managed to steal their sheep in Imperial Age. Now, granted, if they still have their sheep in Imperial Age, they've probably either already resigned or it's their first time playing. But now, having gone through the fringe Paladin contenders, I still feel like the top tier is Teutons, Franks, and Lithuanians. What about some of the Cavalier civilizations though? Do any of them have the potential to sneak into a top Paladin list? What about Bulgarians with 33% faster attacking Cavaliers? Nope. How about Malian Cavaliers with +5 attack from Farimba? Nope. Okay then, what about Berbers 20% cheaper units with balanced resources? Not even close. Remember, with Teutons, we're not talking about any old Paladins, but arguably the best in melee. So to bring it all back, are Teuton Paladins the best overall? Personally, I don't think so, but it's a situation where you could make a reasonable argument for it. In melee battles, they're second only to Lithuanians with 3 or 4 relics, which again isn't guaranteed for them to get every time, but it does mean there's a better melee option out there. Franks also hold out slightly better against archers and have a much faster creation time. Of course, on top of that, Teutons are also the slowest of the group. Now, all that said, practically speaking, I think Teutons may have the best army composition to surround their paladins. Some of their options include hand cannons, siege onagers, bombard cannons, higher melee infantry, since remember their melee bonus also applies to their halberdiers, and then of course there's the elite Teutonic Knight, which is now faster than ever. You obviously won't go for all of those things at once, but it's a lot of really powerful options, and Teutons can now throw top tier paladins into that mix. So that's my take on Teuton Paladins and where I think they fit into the Paladin hierarchy in the current balance. Special thanks to patrons Jean-Paul, Samantha, Joseph, Brian, Seb, Paul, and everyone else on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.